Well, good morning and welcome to today's Thursday Thought after a one-week hiatus. Well, the recent attempt on the life of Mr. Trump has brought out old memories for those of us who have lived through other assassination attempts on political figures. My memories begin with John F. Kennedy's assassination. Later in that decade, Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King were killed. Ronald Reagan was shot in the early 1980s, but he survived. Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was injured later in a shooting. Now, these events, while tragic, also remind us of some things. First, the fragility of life, even when that life is protected by one of the premier protection agencies in the world. No protection agency or police force can be 100% perfect. Humans do make mistakes, and one mistake is all it takes for something tragic to happen. And second, these events remind us of our common bond. We are all humans. We are all part of humanity and the larger society. Now, we may have different opinions and ideologies. We may forcefully disagree even about certain issues, but we must develop ways to live in relative harmony with one another and practice those ways and methods. And for we who are Christians, we have a special obligation. Even in the throes of chaos, violence, and disharmony, we are charged with demonstrating the love of Christ to those in our sphere of influence. Regardless of who is the president, regardless of which political party controls the levers of political power, regardless of who is appointed to the Supreme Court, or how we're dealing with refugees, or what the current law is regarding abortion, we Christians are called to be salt and light, lovers of God and our neighbor, heralds of the saving grace of God through Jesus Christ. And to that end, we are commanded to be sure that our speech is filled with grace. We are told to offer a cup of cold water to one who is thirsty, to provide clothing for those in need, feed the hungry, care for the fatherless and the widows, and above all, to be ready to give an answer for the hope that lies within us. Now, you'll notice that there is no mention in that list of divine commands to disparage, disrespect, or demonize someone who disagrees with us politically. There's no mention in that list of divine commands to invoke a God is on our side attitude in a political disagreement. There's no mention in that list of divine commands to make Christianity a national religion. And there's no mention in that list of divine commands that allows Christians a get out of jail free card if they disobey the governing authority. Well, I'll close this thought with words from an editorial in a recent Christian Chronicle. For my Christian friends, heed these words. Can you imagine what would happen if Christians funneled all of the energy and treasure that we now spend on nationalism, politics, vitriol, hot-button issues, and even relatively innocent political memes into truly loving our neighbor? Cheryl Mann Bacon was the author of the editorial, and she says this, and I quote, "We have not mastered the lessons of history, and much less the lessons of the Sermon on the Mount. We forget that Christians with no political power whatsoever, believing in a risen Christ who never sought or espoused any earthly power, changed the world in a generation. And they did it without a bully pulpit, without a 24/7 news cycle, without social media. Amid war, disease, and disaster, they fed the hungry, rescued abandoned babies, and created hospitals to care for the sick and dying. The Romans didn't change, but Christians loved their neighbors anyway. Heed that lesson. Your community has hungry people in it. Go feed them. Your state has neglected, abused, and unwanted children. Take care of them. Your community has immigrants and refugees, legal and otherwise, who are frightened and lonely. Welcome them." End quote. Well, may God bless you as you continue down the path of life, always remembering and heeding the lessons of the early Christians in the Roman Empire, who loved their neighbors in concrete and practical ways, and in so doing, they changed the world.